Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of the Be Like That podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about, religion and culture and how, they kind of sometimes clash if, you have a rich culture. I don't know, man, because I'm trying to think of white people.
Well, they can clash, but at the same time, they can also just mesh together in a way that you don't realize that they are one and the same or two different things, right?
Exactly. I mean, I guess, culture has such a wide, diverse meaning, because I don't think you can ever really define culture, at least, that encapsulates everything that culture is. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think religion is part of that, and it kind of becomes part of that. But yeah, that's going to be the topic for today, and I think everyone here has some interesting stories and things like that that we can all bring up about, how much it's, things that don't make sense, and at the same time a lot of things that do make sense with our specific culture, where the reason I kind of wanted to talk about this is, I don't know if you guys ever noticed, there's so many things in South Asian culture that isn't technically supposed to be okay in Islam, which 3 out of the 4 of us here are Muslim, and I don't know about you, but have you ever seen that where maybe Hinduism doesn't fully acknowledge, not acknowledge, but support the things that the culture wants you to do?
I'm sure there are, but I've been out of the Hindu loop for so long, I probably wouldn't be able to come up with one off the top of my head.
Okay, all right, that's completely fine. But before we get started with that, anyone want anything they wanted to mention for today? Anyone do anything interesting? Anything interesting happen?
I'd say the most interesting I can say is that because of and I guess this is getting topical for a second, but because of COVID numbers spiking up again, I decided, screw a haircut, I'm just gonna take a trimmer to my head. So I am now very, very egg-like in form factor.
Oh yeah, to me, did the self haircut like so many people did during the middle of big quarantine.
Honestly, it was either a question of do it now and get a decent haircut, but then also just do the egg down the line, or just do the egg now and just accept my fate.
Did it turn out okay?
It came out evenly. This isn't the first time I've done it now. This is the 3rd time, I believe, right? If I look at my head, I'm just it's even, right? It's all even. The top is a little bit longer than the sides, so it doesn't look, I don't know. I made some effort into making it look presentable or aesthetic, but at the same time, there's only so much. Actually, I'm gonna say this, and I know I'm gonna be wrong, because someone who can cut their own hair better is, I'm sure, gonna school me. But in my opinion, there's only so much I can do with just a trimmer, right?
Yeah, you're right.
No, yeah.
Granted, if anyone asks now, I'm just gonna be like, "Oh, my hair is short for aerodynamics."
Aerodynamics.
Gotta go fast. Yeah. No drag
fast
with big hair.
Oh my god, you just gotta run fast, right? You're like the kid at the school year.
Exercise while you're stuck at home?
Yes.
Nah. Well, Tamid, I think I mentioned it a couple times, but ever since I think last year of high school, I was cutting my own hair.
You did mention that. I heard don't you cut your brother's hair?
I did for a bit, but he wanted those special fades with the lines in them. I don't know how to do all that. But yeah, I did cut my hair because my own barber sucked. He would cut my hair, and every single time I'd sheepishly be like, yeah, no, this is just what I wanted. And then I'd go home, get the trimmers, and adjust it a little bit myself, because the right side was a little bit longer. You know how they do fades?
Yeah.
So the fade, the part was a little bit higher on the left side or the right side than the other. So I would have to do little corrections at home. And one day I decided, fuck it, why am I paying $25 for haircuts every month or so when I could just save that money and cut my own hair?
You paid $25?
$25?
At some point, this guy decided he's hot shit, and he changed the haircut price from 15 straight to 20.
What?
And then I handed him the 20, not knowing about the price change. So I handed him the 20. He was like, "What? No tip?" And I was like, "Ha ha, good joke, Mike." And then he pointed up, and all of the prices had gone up by $5. This is probably in like 2012, maybe 2014 latest.
There's no other barbers in the area?
He's like right around the block, and I've gone to like a couple other ones, and they don't know how to cut my hair either. Maybe I just haven't committed to one barber long enough aside from this guy, but I decided fuck it, and I just decided to cut my own hair.
Whoa, interesting.
Well,
It's funny
yeah.
because when you said 25, like Nikib and I
Yeah.
immediately perked up because we both go to the same barbershop that charges 12, and
Well,
I've never had any actual complaints from them.
Yeah,
Like
I
12
mean,
to start, right? It can
it
go
just-
up from there.
they just recently
Yeah.
went up to 14 because of quarantine. But like that's understandable.
Oh yeah,
like-
that makes sense. That's
like
fine.
they went up to say if you went back to you haven't gone back to Narek since quarantine, have you?
Well, I was gonna go back this weekend and then change my mind. So yeah, no, the last time I went it was 12.
Right. So they're completely
Wow.
brand new. So our barbershop, well, mine that I gave to me, the dickhead.
I've done nothing wrong.
No. But they completely like revamped their store, and it kind of like feels like a salon now, which is so strange because I've been going to this guy since I was like 14, 13. Yeah, it's been a
Wow.
long time, right? And it's like brand new because it used to just be a traditional Queens barbershop, you know what I'm saying? And now it's like brand
Right.
new, and it was like 14, not the worst thing in the world, but before quarantine, I would get my beard done and my hair, right?
Yeah.
Just because if I was going in, might as well get everything trimmed up, look spiffy. But
Now
Oh,
Hey,
wow.
thank you, Craig.
yeah, thank you, Craig. Well, that was so late. Okay, whatever. But
You would get your beard and your hair done.
Yeah, hair done. And then since quarantine, I didn't get a haircut, and I was like, I'm lazy. I don't want to look like a caveman, so I got like a straight razor and started doing my own beard. And then when I went back, I got my beard done from Narek and my haircut. And it cost me like upwards of $30, where I used to just be like, I would just take $25 for beard and haircut. So then, since then, I just get a haircut from him, and I've only done it
Yeah.
twice since quarantine. Well, not even quarantine hasn't ended, but well, it has ended, but since we've entered tier or stage 4 or whatever.
I mean, I will say one thing is that like I've never had an issue with Nerek's cuts or anyone there and
Yeah.
how much they charge. But I will say one thing I can definitely respect is like Pratik deciding, hey,
Yeah.
this guy's charging me a lot and I don't even like it. Fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself, right? Because like when it comes to haircuts, that's not something I've ever really tried to do myself. But like whenever they ask me, hey, you want me to do your beard for you? I'm just like, nah, it's fine. I'll just do it at home and take care of it. One, save money, and two, I just do it the way I want to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know about you guys. I'm sometimes, and to a fault, I'm a little too sheepish about like where do exactly this. No, I didn't like that. No, do this instead. Right? Like I don't know. I'm not very particular bossy. I do my best to describe it. And like thankfully, when it comes to my hair, they're good enough to like know what I'm talking about. But like I can totally respect that. Like, hey, you're deciding I'm just gonna do it myself, right? Like, Nikib, a while back, weren't you learned how to use a barbershop blade yourself, right?
Yeah, I started using a straight razor for my own beard. Yeah, so I started doing that.
Right, and like
Yeah.
I think that's cool as fuck, right? It's just like, hey, I'm just gonna go to town on my own beard with a straight up knife and
Yeah.
not
Out
just
of my
slash
own
my
beard.
face out.
Well, I have to. The thing is, I mean, it was half necessity and other half, saving money. Thing is, with I am also I have great admiration for Pratik here, right? Because I don't have the balls to do that because I just can't because there's certain parts of your head that you can't see, and at the same time, I feel like I've said this to a lot of people about haircuts if we ever talk about it is like. There's a certain way, well, not a certain way. You have to really know what you want, and you have to know your way around what everything really means. Like, for example, like a lot of people, they go to a barbershop and they're like, oh, he cut off too much. What I always do is I'm like, hey, show me how much you're going to cut off, like when I say an inch. And then I'll be like, okay, a little less than that. Okay, maybe a little more than that.
Yeah.
Or you always start off small. Like I start off saying, okay, hey, if my hair's really long, I'll say cut off an inch, right? Because if I really want to get 2 inches cut off, I just say cut off an inch. I'll see if I like it, and then we can move on. So like, there's like different subtle ways, right? And then some people don't know, like everyone just gets a fade, but there's a high fade, there's a low fade, there's a taper. Do you want a neckline? You won't be able to get a neckline with a skin fade. There's a bunch of things like that people just don't know. And I feel like that screws a lot of people because barbers just do what they think is best.
People
I
are
am
too nervous to
definitely
ask
people in
about
this.
these things too. Like the terms, I don't know what any of what you just said is. What the fuck is a taper? What the fuck is a neckline?
Well, your neckline is the neckline in the back of your head. Like,
The line on the back
Is
of
it-
your head.
Is it the split between hair and skin?
Yeah, at the back, at the
okay,
nape of
okay.
your neck, at the nape, right? That's like,
Yeah.
do you want that rounded or do you want that like squared?
Okay, okay.
How do you want your sideburns? There's so many things that go into a haircut, and it really just comes down to like research. But
Yeah.
but again, a great admiration for you to do it yourself because I don't have the balls to do it.
He also has it
feel
easy
like,
because
yeah.
you have your preferences and you don't know like, oh, do I if Nikki were to ask you, do you like your neckline, like, do you want it round or do you want it straight? You have no idea how to answer that up until like 5 seconds ago.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
you already do have an answer to that because you do that whenever you give yourself a cut.
Right.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of it comes down to, I mean, I think like to me at least knows this. I change my hair quite a bit. Like it doesn't drastically change quite often, but I get a different haircut every now and then. Like sometimes I'll go with the full-on Pidgeotto look, right? Sometimes I'll go a lot shorter. Sometimes I'll get something that isn't faded at all, right? They all look similar, but
You
they're
ever done
never
a
the
buzz
same
cut?
haircut. That's actually something I was really debating on doing. Like I was really wanting to get a buzz cut with a high fade, or like not even a buzz cut, just fuck, I don't know how to explain. I'll send you guys a
Like
picture.
a 2 on
eventually.
top, 3 on top.
Yeah, stuff like that, right? And like really go that route. But because my hairline, I have a widow's peak. I feel like like unless I get my hairline done, it's gonna look like.
You know
Really
who else is a
strange.
widow's peak?
Oh, you.
Chris Hemsworth.
No, Chris Hemsworth.
All
he
I'm
does.
saying is you have the length.
I do always have the length.
I thought the answer was Vegeta, but like
Vegeta does have a widow's
Vegeta,
peak.
that's a
This
great
is true.
widow's peak. My God. Well, very interestingly talking about haircuts. I can
wait,
talk about
so
haircuts all day.
real quick question for everyone, right? Just to gauge the room. Also, unless like Rafi, do you want to talk about your hair and or struggles related to it?
Oh yeah, sure. So you guys are worried about cutting your hair. I'm thinking to myself, how would I look with long hair? Because
You have your long hair now.
yeah, it's kind of long. The last time I had a haircut was July.
Oh, that's a long time, buddy.
Yeah, I had a haircut in July, so now like it covers my eyes and my ears, so I'm almost there at the I don't know.
How long do you want to grow it?
Maybe up to my shoulders.
Oh wow.
Because Rafi, I think you and I are doing the same thing. I'm like 3 inches off. So what is that? Like 4 or 5 months away from there.
3 inches. That is not 4 or 5. That might be like 6 months.
Basically, I'm just waiting until
Maybe.
barbershops open, and
Well, it
then my
depends on-
Russian barber can like be like, "Oh, you look like Shah Rukh Khan now."
Wait,
I'll be
Rafi,
like,
you go to
"Thank
New York
you."
as well, don't you?
No, I go to a barber near my house.
Oh, now you swapped, right? Since you moved.
I swapped, yeah, because I moved, and
Yeah.
that's too far away now. So
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense.
So you're both going for big, long, luscious locks, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes,
Alliteration. You know, I
That is
when I
first
had
of
my
all.
hair that long, I grew so impatient with it. Like, it just, I mean, in the summer, it's because I had it in the summer, you know, when my hair was really long. So it's where it just got really hot, really oily. I was tight.
I'll say
Yeah,
this,
I can see
Nikki,
that
you
being
mentioned
issue.
wanting a buzz cut. I don't think I've ever seen you in a haircut that isn't like some variation of like big wavy hair.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
like-
that's like naturally my hair is like that, right? So I like to show it off. Right?
I think it looks good.
Yeah, I mean,
For anyone that doesn't know him, if his hands aren't stroking his hair at least once in a conversation, like
Yeah.
something's wrong.
no,
right,
no,
like,
it's instead of
At
really
least
paying
once,
attention.
this man has to get his fingers deep into his hair and make sure you see him get a nice handful of that scalp.
Well, like it started
It's kinda
off.
hot.
Well, damn. It started off as like, because I don't use any product, my hair doesn't generally like stay, and that's completely fine. Because of that, when I was younger, it would like fall over on top of my like forehead, so I just pull it back, and then that just became a habit. You know, like now it's literally I'll just do it. Now that you mentioned it, I really want to do it right now.
yeah, I have that habit too,
Right.
like just putting my hair back in place.
Yeah, that's all it is. Right now, it's just like straight up a habit. Even if my hair is like short, like I'll still do it.
See, I'm the opposite because even when my hair is like long, or at least relatively speaking, long for me, like I try not to touch my hair as much as possible because then it gets oily so quickly when I start touching it. Like the more I
that's
fiddle with
Oh.
it, the less it cooperates because it's getting
That's
oily.
yeah. You gotta like do it very lightly as best as you can. I don't know. It's very
Also,
strange.
there's a technique to stroking your hair, isn't there?
There's a technique to everything, my G. There's always a technique. I mean, it also really depends. Like everyone's hair is different. Like it really is just that. What can
Yeah.
you possibly do? Well, that I didn't think we'd get into talking about haircuts. Very interesting. Well, let's get into the topic of the week: religion and culture / versus culture. So I wanted to. I was thinking about this like a lot recently. Our faith. I'm not. No one here is a scholar, right? I do not know nearly as much as I should know about both my culture and my faith. Maybe I know a little bit about my culture, right? There's so many things. Like for example, here's a very simple example. South Asian. There's a very big correlation between South Asian, well, specifically women, and gold. I think South Asian women wear the most gold out of any like ethnic group across the world. If I'm wrong, if anyone knows I'm wrong, like correct me. But I feel like that's true. And even a lot of men wear gold. In Islam, men are not technically supposed to wear gold. I don't know if it's like haram, but I know that they're not supposed to wear gold.
Isn't it jewelry in general? Or
No,
am I
it's
wrong?
not. No,
Or
it's gold.
Silver. Silver's
Yeah,
fine.
silver's
Gold is
fine.
bad.
Gold is bad, right? But
Oh.
beforehand, before like the Mughals brought Islam to the Indian subcontinent, I'm assuming men wore gold as much as they want. It's such a massive part of our culture. Like think about it. Like so many dowries are paid in gold, right? Like it's
Yeah.
straight up paid in gold, right? So it's such a interesting, like that's such a small like example of what I'm trying to get at. Like it kind of clashes in certain scenarios. Another thing is like our weddings. Our weddings are very colorful. Our weddings are very fun, and that's what they've kind of become. But they're not supposed to be like that, right? It's supposed like at least the wedding purely in Islam is just the nikah, right? The reception is our cultural aspect of it. They're singing and dancing and blah blah blah.
Should we explain what that is for
Oh yeah,
people who
please
don't know?
go ahead.
Just
Someone
explain it for
what the
Pratik.
yes, Pratik doesn't know what the nikah is. So someone explain what the nikah is.
Yeah, that
Rafi.
sounds like something that like might need to be censored later.
Yeah, oh no,
Alright.
no, it's not. It's not,
Oh.
not at all.
Spelled Nikka or something like that. Anyways,
Jeez.
I barely have an idea what it is, but it's just the ceremony itself where the imam or whatever reads like the rites or whatever for the marriage.
Rights.
I don't know what the hell it is.
Like,
Like
I
whatever
think-
he says for the marriage.
Is it like
Basically, that's
blessings?
where they read out like the actual, they do like a prayer for it, right? And then they
Yeah.
basically it's the religious, like in at least in like our American culture, right? Couples will tend to have like a regular like wedding in a hall and that kind of whole traditional ceremony,
Yeah.
right? But the nikah is the religious aspect where a imam or like a Muslim priest will essentially be reading out prayers and doing like the vows there in a much more smaller, more like close family ceremony.
It's usually done at a
Yes.
house. It's usually done at either the
Something like
the
that,
groom's house or the
Right.
usually it's the groom's
It's
house.
at the bride's house actually, I think.
Is it the bride's house?
Yeah, yes, because my cousin recently
remember.
got married, so like
Oh yeah, then
it
is the
happened
bride's
at
house.
our like village when she got married, and basically like it's weird. So like technically, the woman, like the wife itself and the husband, they don't really meet until the end of the ceremony. So
Mhm.
like for the woman itself, she just needs witnesses, male witnesses, to say like, oh yes, this is happening, right? So like really, she doesn't need to be at her own wedding technically, which is
Yeah,
kind of weird.
it's-
But like,
I mean,
anyways,
that's
But yeah, basically it's in Islam, it's the like religious aspect of the couple accepting each other and legitimizing their marriage.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
so
so
it's
there's
like
witnesses for that.
so you could say like the legal aspect of it happens at the nikah, right? And that happens days before the wedding or the ceremony, and then the ceremony is the celebration. Nothing really happens. Sometimes some families I know like to bring the imam to the ceremony and they do it for like a second, then the imam like deuces out, like he just pieces.
Yeah.
It's happened a few times, but I haven't been to a wedding in quite a bit. But yeah, traditionally, like we don't really need the ceremony, right? It's just there
No.
because for the cultural aspect of it, the wedding is a very big day in our culture, right? Your wedding day is a massive day, probably like one of the biggest days. And I mean, not in just in our culture in general, right? But
Right.
not just because in South Asian culture, marriage is not just the groom and the bride; it is the merging of families, right? So the ceremony is the first day where the entirety of both families first interact properly. So
It's like it's as much for them as it is for the couple.
no, it's more for them. It's more
That's
for
actually
the
fair.
More for the
family.
That's pretty
family
fair.
than for the couple.
No, that's literally what it is. It's when you get married.
That's when they
it's not
flex,
just you.
right? That's when
Yeah.
families flex and they're like, look at this hall, look at
Look
these
up.
decorations, look at the food, and now get photographed eating our
Yeah.
wonderful food.
Yeah. Speaking of weddings, this is very interesting. Well, not very interesting. So I don't go to quite like a lot of weddings. First of all, because no one that I'm like really chill with, like even family members, are really getting married or have gotten married like recently. But the last like really fun wedding that like everyone kind of at least in my family really like had a lot of fun at and really was memorable was my youngest uncle's, right? And it's always been fun. Like I remember I danced at that wedding. Like I used to dance when I was a kidder for a little critter for weddings and shit like that. And I remember ever since I was like young, my parents were like, "Your wedding's gonna be more fun than this. I'm gonna make sure of it." So boys, we gonna turn up whenever Nikib gets married, which is not soon. So we lit
Nice.
Okay. I mean,
You
it's gonna be
sure
a
our
haram ass
family-
wedding.
under the table.
Mhm.
What?
No,
But
bro,
then
what are you
see,
talking
isn't the
about?
problem? No, it has to be on the table because then his family and her family will look at all of us funny, like we are the walking embodiment of Satan.
Listen, I will not be sober, but no one will know.
You can't say that now because anyone listening is going to be like,
Uh-oh.
"Oh,
Mom's
let's
not gonna
remember
watch
this one
this.
10 years from now."
No.
Oh, no.
I will. Who said that? To me, you can't be a bad influence on me.
Oh,
buddy.
I apologize. My imitation of Nikib is just so spot on, and I really need to control myself because I
Yeah.
could get him into genuine trouble.
Yes, potentially, but no,
Quick, Nikib, say you'll murder someone and blame it on me.
Okay, move on now.
Yeah, so
Well, moving on.
yeah, that I just wanted to put that in there. So we lit, boys.
But yeah, back to the question being,
Mm.
so in a lot of weddings that like go on anywhere in the past decade or so, especially in the States, it'll usually have a religious aspect to it, which is a nikah, and then an actual like reception and whatnot. And I guess to Nikki's point, the question becomes, if you're doing it purely religiously, you kind of only need to get up to nikah and then you're good to go, right? That's it. You could just go home. You're done. You're religiously married.
Yes, sir.
And in our society, of course, like you got to go to get a court marriage and get your marriage license, but that's like a separate matter.
Mhm.
But like culturally, right? The nikah for a lot of like, granted, I don't want to. You just say this is for everybody. I'm sure there's some families who, yeah, the nikah is one and done, right? But once you finish that, then that's only like part one in terms of ceremonies, and then that's when everyone changes into the crazy good outfits and like starts flexing at the reception,
Mhm.
and you know that's where all the money goes.
You know, I have so much more fun at like holuds than I do. Like the weddings are cool, but I don't know. Holuds are so much more personal. I don't know. I like holuds a lot.
Holuds
they
are usually
just for fun?
smaller, right?
Holuds
Yes,
are
so
like
holuds
your side of the
indivi-
family.
So yeah, holuds are. So what holuds are essentially. That's a cultural thing. Holuds are cultural, right? Where you go
Yeah.
and you essentially
Yeah.
feed the bride or the groom, depending on which one's your part of your family, right? But you go to
Yes.
both. Like if it's someone that you're close to, you go to both. You know, like for my uncles, I went to all of their holuds and their wives' holuds, and same with my aunts. But the holuds are always the most fun because the majority of people there are your family. You know what I'm saying, or your side of the family, which is always this. I don't know. I've always enjoyed them a lot more than the big reception.
Don't forget the most important part of a holud is the holud itself, right? Is getting that pigment on. Basically, the point is when you go there, you take a little pigment, like a little. Is it
It's turmeric.
Yeah,
turmeric,
right?
turmeric, yeah.
So it's a spice in. It's not actually like just a regular yellow
Yeah.
pigment, right?
Yeah.
And you get to like get it on like the bride or groom's face or
Oh.
whatever limbs.
As I've gotten older, I've become the little shit that like tries to mess with them the most.
What, like smack them silly with a handful
Well,
of
I don't
turmeric?
hit them. but I'm just like, oh, whoops,
had
I
cousins who
grabbed too
smacked them
much.
silly.
I'd be like, oh, whoops, I grabbed too much, and like sprinkle it a little bit on their head too. Sometimes too, it's kind of fun.
I had like my family basically my sister and I are the youngest amongst all of our cousins, right?
Yeah.
So we went to a good number of weddings growing up because basically by the time we were born, most of our cousins were like late teenagers, right? And as we got older, they all hit marrying age. And I remember one wedding where like one of the cousins had like 3 or 4 brothers. All of them took a handful of turmeric and once they were ready for pictures, smacked the dog shit out of him,
Oof.
right? Like 3-4 hands full of turmeric, all at the moment the photographer says cheese, and it was hilarious, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's always a
holuds
fun
are a
part.
great time.
But yeah, so again, like the holud, right? There's nothing that like in our religion that says anything for it or against it. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's right to do, but from the things that I've seen are wrong to do in our religion, I don't feel like a holud is very what's the word? Acceptable? Is not very halal, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Something like that.
Right?
I think like a big question to ask would be like something that when I was little I always thought was weird up until someone convinced me that I guess it's not supposed to be, is that like Islam says like music and dancing is bad, right?
Yes.
Someone can correct me, Rafi, you might possibly know more about this than I do. But like I remember someone telling me that like when the day of judgment comes or some shenanigans like that.
Every
like,
minute of a song you played is 1 minute and 10 minutes
something
in
like
hell.
It's like so like it's like, oh, the body parts are gonna start talking and say like what you did with them. Like so like your ears are gonna say what you listen to, and
my
your
ears
mouth
are gonna
is say what
snitch
you
at
talk
me and
about.
be like, "Hey, this dude listened to Candy Shop. That wasn't
Yeah.
very PG of him."
He listened to my milkshake brings other girls to the
Oh
oh, it's the
no.
boys. It's the boys.
Yeah. No, I mean my milkshakes bring everybody to the yard.
Yes.
It's a party in my yard.
Yes.
Nice,
Hey,
nice.
to me. What you trying to say?
Point being, like on the religion, like the thing is, the people who attend the holud and attend the reception can be very religious, right? Like I've never had any actual family members who are like, I have a lot of family members who can be very religious, right?
Mhm.
And I've never heard them say, "Oh, don't have a reception or don't have a holud."
Yeah, right?
Even though there is tons of music being played and tons of dancing, right? But at the same time, in theory, if you were like really, really strict about it and you were very, very pious, you would think, oh, I should avoid scenarios where I myself or my family members are being put into a scenario where they could be doing something that's considered, improper in religion, right?
Right. So, like, I want to bring up this question of it's always very interesting to me, or at least this statement and then whatever we can go from, but it's always interesting to me the lines people draw in religion or like what they are okay with. And I mean, even all of us, right? For those of us who somewhat care, or like, you not even just somewhat care, are a little, I don't know what the word is. Conscious, a little conscious of what our religion says, right? What are the lines that we draw for ourselves, and why do we do that? Right? Like in our culture, we draw the line, right, behind all the cultural stuff that we were saying, okay, this might be bad, but we'll do it anyway because this is what we do. Like this is literally just tradition, and this is literally what we grew up doing. It's always interesting, and that's why my perspective on like religion in general is like, no two people will ever believe the same exact things, and trying to do that will have individuals have their own perspective, right? And you can't ever whenever you learn about religion from a third party, their perspective will always be passed down towards you. And I think even for my kids or like the next generations, I can't avoid that. I will teach you what I know. How you want to interpret it comes down to you, right? And that's what everyone does. But people will, I guess, twist what the texts say for their own gain or for what they believe, right? How many times do your parents tell you, oh, music is not good, and then turn around, they're listening to their own bops, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just very interesting to me. What do you guys think?
Thankfully, I've never had that, but I have had my mom be like, "Hey, it's time to pray," like for Maghrib, right, for evening prayer. We're like, turn that shit off, right? But going back to what you said, it is really unfortunate how easy it is to start twisting religion and in turn kind of like imposing your own ideas of culture onto it, because like people have many different views on Islam, right? Someone who doesn't know any better and only watches certain outlets might think, oh, is Islam something that is oppressing, or is oppressive towards certain demographics? And it's like, I have met people who have said, oh no, Islam actually supports giving women more rights, right? That the Prophet regarded his wives very highly, and they were considered very powerful people in his life, right? At the same time,
they were very influential people in his life, very much.
Exactly,
so.
right? I think to the point where, and again, I am in no way a scholar, and this is just going off of whatever I remember learning from years ago, being a good little brown boy going to Islamic school, right, to Arabic school. But like I remember, I think one of them was like a CEO of a company, or like what would be considered like she was a merchant, like a big merchant at the time, and ran trading caravans and shit like that, right? So what we would consider as like a leader of some sort of company type of thing, right? But then there are also people who can easily take text from the Quran and be like, oh no, this very clearly points to your wife is subservient to you and must listen to each and every single one of your words, right? And it's like, it's amazing how much someone can just impose their own biases and like what their viewpoint of culture should be, and use religion to try and justify that.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, even in Saudi Arabia, women can't drive, which is the epicenter of the religion.
No, they can now, I think.
Oh, they can now, but before
they can
would,
now being the sentence, right?
5 years, not like a year ago, whatever. And women are still getting executed for. I think a woman got executed for saying that her wife, her husband raped her or some shit like that. I think that happened recently. I don't know.
Oh, wasn't that it wasn't her husband like one of the princes or something like that? Like she was somewhere deep in the government or somewhere high up in like the royal family. Yeah. So they had to offer real bad.
Well, this is the epicenter of the religion. So when the global world hears about that, guess what happens? But that's my point is like every single person on this earth will have their own perspective on what they are taught. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always very interesting to me to see the way where people draw their lines. And yeah, what Tamid said, like I've met certain people. There's this person who, when I mentioned to him, we went to the same school, like we went to the same university. And when I mentioned to him, oh, I took my design project with a female professor, like he didn't say anything, but I knew, like as soon as he said it, it was like he said, like he was like, oh yeah, I didn't take that class, and I knew as soon as he gave me that response, he didn't take that class because the professor was a female. And I was like, man, how? Like, bro, like what do you do? Yeah, that's always very interesting to me. Like even me, I know the lines that I cross. I guess it always I find it like I try to learn more about people who I don't know, I guess I feel like sometimes use their faith, kind of really stand by their faith, but then break the rules where they
selectively choose what to follow and what not.
And everyone does that. I always find it interesting to see which people choose which rules, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's one thing I would say to I 100% am guilty of selectively following which rules I want and which I don't, right?
Everyone is.
And I have my own reasons and viewpoints for each of those, and we can have a separate conversation about that, but we'll be here forever, right? But point being, I won't take my viewpoints and impose that on someone else, right?
Yes.
But
or judge someone else.
Exactly, right? Or judge someone else for their own viewpoints and their own take on what should be followed, what shouldn't be, right? But the biggest thing is, I think it's easy for us to all kind of give a pass to I don't want to be too rude about this, but old people who have dumb or prehistoric viewpoints, right? But then when you meet people our age or just anyone younger than 30 or 40 who has such old prehistoric how what do you mean, Nakib? You're taking a class with a female professor, right?
Yeah.
How dare you?
Right, and it's what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm taking a class with a female professor, right? Where did you grow up? What when you walk down the street, what do you see? Right? Do you see women who aren't shackled yet? Right? Do you freak out internally when you're walking to the subway of I see loose hair. I see women who haven't been claimed by a man. What kind of society do I live in? And it's what's good with you, bro? What are you doing? Right? And it's like, unfortunately, like I have met my own fair share of people who are like, I remember this one guy in college, super normal guy. High school, super normal. I actually knew him since middle school, right? And once he got to college, we had a mutual friend who was just like, talking about future plans and whatnot. And he unironically said, "Oh, I would want a wife who didn't go to college." Right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, uh yeah, well, because she's too busy like working, like dropped out of college to start her own gig type of thing, like
Direct competitor to Google. Yeah, that's what it was.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's like, nah, like I just don't want her to be educated.
No, very specifically, I want a woman who is so fucking aspirational that she left college and she's doing her own things.
I don't
Just
know,
make
man,
sure she don't go to college. I understand.
When someone says
justifying it.
something that wild, and up until
You
that
have to
moment you
justify
thought
it,
this
so they're
person
like,
is a
what's
decent
going-
human being, you're just
Yeah.
like, they're not
Right,
crazy, right? Right? And then this
Alright.
person, unironically, with a very straight face, apparently said, "No, I don't want her to be educated. I want her to stay at home. I want to be a housewife and just take care of the kids in the house." And it's like, oh, I see.
I mean, I guess
Oh.
it's fine if like there's a girl out there who is looking to be a housewife, but just like expecting that from women that you find attractive is a bit odd.
Here's the
Odd?
thing is, I know what you mean in like, there's if there's someone out there, or no, not if, right? Because I'm sure there are. But if you just want to be a housewife, that's fine. You do you, right? And if that's the thing you and your husband agree on, or you and your partner agree on, that's cool. Again, you do you, right? But his reasoning to why he wants a housewife and how he wants his housewife to be is to specifically be uneducated, right? So as to set up a sort of like weird power gap between him and his wife. And this is a very religious person, right? Who also, like Nikib's friend, does not take classes with female professors, right? Specifically wants to make sure that basically he can keep them in line, right? And it's like, I cannot believe you are real. I cannot believe you are our age and you are a real person right now.
Quick tangent. I feel like he's gonna lose his fucking mind when he realizes that Biden isn't gonna run for re-election in 2024. And if Kamala Harris actually becomes president, I think he's probably gonna like have a breakdown.
Oh my god.
Okay. At first I was confused where you were going with that.
Me too.
But I now understand that he would like you're saying someone like him would freak out at the idea of a female president running the world. And the thing is, knowing the biggest thing is that I'm willing to bet he wouldn't ever publicly freak out, but he would just sit there and think if she ever fucked up, she fucked up because she's a woman.
Yeah, because she had her period.
Oh my god.
Some dumb shit like that.
It's so childish to me that that perspective still exists. It literally makes no sense. But again, what our perspective on this is different from someone who he grew up in whatever environment that he grew up. But I wanted to ask Pratik a question because we've been talking about our meet to meet and Rafi's religion. Pratik, have you ever experienced anything like this, or have you ever thought about it?
Thought about like
the lines being crossed in Hinduism, because we already don't know much about Islam, right? We just know the bare minimum of what we know. But from someone who grew up in a Hindu household, have you ever experienced someone breaking the rules that seems interesting why they're breaking the rules or anything like that? Because I don't know what the rules really are.
I mean, the rules are pretty much the same in every religion, right? Like, don't be a cunt.
Yeah, don't be a cunt. I can back that. Don't be a cunt, guys.
But the thing is, I stopped being religious consciously around 7. So
Okay.
I don't really I don't really know too much about Hinduism, aside that they're a bunch of gods, but also some other people say, hey, these are all different aspects of one god. So Hinduism is actually not polytheistic; it's monotheistic. All this shit. But I left because it just seems very it just seemed like all of the people who were Hindu were kind of hypocrites, right? At one point, I mean, obviously, it's just because I was a kid and I didn't really like the religion.
No, I see. I
But
see that. Yeah.
yeah, like when we would go to temple, I would see these parents like yelling at their kids and like all of this shit, that shit, right? And then they would go inside the temple, do these prayers and like be all pious and shit, and then walk around do exactly the same shit that they were doing beforehand. So it just seems kind of dumb. Also, a lot of the people who were big advocates of being religious and Hindu specifically would tell me things like, you know, if there is suffering, it's probably because you know, you did something wrong. So remember, be good to your parents and shit, right?
Yep.
It's fucking annoying because around that time, you know, my family was going through a couple of struggles, right? But we were all like being decent human beings. We weren't like the things we were suffering from. It wasn't proportionate to the shit that we were getting, right? So yeah, like that's the kind of mentality that pushed me away from religion. But I like a quick little tangent. I think I heard somewhere that people who are religious are more hopeful, and that helps them get further. I tried to get back into religion for like a year. I couldn't do it.
You
It
know,
just didn't make sense.
you know,
Yeah.
with that with that statement, right? With like, you know, trying to get back into religion and people being hopeful. You know, my whole perspective on at least religion is I'd rather believe in something versus nothing. Which, you know, that doesn't, I don't want that to come off the wrong way. Like, I literally just mean I hope that there is something bigger than all of us. Just because then being an atheist or being agnostic, it just feels, I don't know. Yeah, hopeless. You do feel a
Feels
little
empty,
hopeless.
yeah.
Right, it feels empty. It feels like life is worth nothing, right? And like I don't expect there to be something afterwards. I just, again, that's the whole point of faith. You don't expect anything. It's literally just belief, right?
Mhm.
Hope. That's what it's really behind. And like when I was younger, like when I was a teenager, and this, like, I feel like those emotions obviously always are heightened during your teenage years. It's like you always think in black and white, right? When you're in high school, everything is black and white, right? Like you just think, oh, how could my parents say this and then turn around and do that, or how could this imam say this and turn around and do that? That means like, you know, religion is broken. Well, that's not true, because there's so many people who have a more progressive view, because times change, morality, like moral compasses change, and things change. Things that were wrong in the past don't need to be wrong now in the global sense of things, right? Like I was in the middle of this quarantine, I was doing the same thing. I was really trying to not be more religious but learn more, right? Try my best to just understand a bit more. And I don't know how I got to the point. Like I think after I saw my friend's like dog, I was like, is it really haram for us to get a dog? Because I kind of want one. But but I was like watching a lecture, right, talking about this in the most explicit sense. Dog is completely fine. If it's a guard dog, stays out the house, right? The whole point of it not being inside the house in Islam is because of hygiene, right? That's all it is. But there's one perspective I saw is you can get a dog, but what other person can't do, what a different person can't do, is can't look at you and say you are not a Muslim because you have a dog. Right? And I like that's a perfectly understandable perspective, is no one can say anyone else is not a Muslim or not a Hindu or not a Christian just because they want, or like they desire something, or there's something that they want to do that is not overtly destructive, I'd say. Right? So no matter what, like my parents will be like, oh, why'd you get a dog? Like, I mean, I don't want one like as of right now, but I'm saying like they can say, oh, why'd you get one? You know, this is not halal. Like, you know, the angel won't come into your house like they said in the Quran, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it does not make me a Muslim. Nothing that someone does can like allow me to say, give me the authority to say that person is not a Muslim, not a Christian, right? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your religion is your own, right? Your own perspective, because no one else shares that.
Yeah. I actually I heard that the reason you can't have a dog in a Muslim household is because it prevents it like dissuades or prevents angels from coming and taking you to heaven when you die.
There's
something like
a
that.
story. There's a story where I think the angel, well, Gabriel, Jibril in Arabic, right, was going to come to a household, but because there was a dog inside, he didn't come in. That's all it says. It's just a story.
Listen, all I'm saying is, would you rather
Right,
have an
I'm
angel
wrong.
living in your house while you're alive, or would you rather have one take you to heaven when you're dead?
Ruffy, am I wrong with that? I feel like that's the story, right?
No, you're correct
It's
about
something
that.
like that.
It's
Right?
also a lot of it comes from the fact that like you have to also keep in mind, and this is kind of going along with what Nikib said earlier, in that over time, like perspectives on certain things change, right? Even though like religion itself may not change. At the time of the like the writing of the Quran, which is what, like 400 AD, if I remember correctly, right? Somewhere
It's
around
closer
there.
like 500 or so. It's like
Right.
480s, I think. Yeah,
But a good long time ago, right?
1500 years
Around
ago.
that time, right, cats were considered hygienic and kept as pets, right? Which is why like even the Prophet had pet cats, right? But at the time, dogs weren't really domesticated; they were more just street animals, right? So the reasoning was that as a matter of like hygiene, right? Dogs were like, it was discouraged from having dogs kept as animals near you, right? That's why they say, I think Nikib, you mentioned it too, that if you have a dog as either like for farming purposes or for as a guard dog, yeah, have it. Don't let it in the house.
I mean,
right?
so many prophets were shepherds, right? Like the occupation of being a shepherd is kind of a holy concept, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Moses was a shepherd. Even the prophet was partially a shepherd, right? Like, and it you need a there's fucking shepherd dogs for a reason, right?
Right. But like a lot of that is like back in 500 AD, that reasoning makes sense, right? It's also the same reason why the Quran also like has specific texts dedicated to trying to make sure that like
People stay
Muslims
clean.
that follow it are exactly, that they're clean and hygienic, is because at the time not being disgusting and spreading disease is a running problem, which the Quran tried to address, right? But again, that even though society changes in 1500 years, the text doesn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know plenty of people with dogs that are pampered and cleaned arguably better than some people are, right? And it's like, are you telling me this good boy right here cannot be, it's a problem for him to be in the house, or it's a problem for him to be in the same room as you? Like, it's fine. He's clean. He's great, right? And it's just a matter of like this is definitely one of those things where culture and religion can easily intersect, right? And like bounce off each other, because yeah, religion will consistently say, yeah, have a pet cat, right? Like I have family members who have cats, and it's like, oh, that's fine, they're cute, whatever, they hang out. But like, I know one family, they let their cat just out into the backyard where it'll just butcher a rat and leave it in the kitchen. And I'll just look at that and be like, is that really cleaner than the dog who never leaves the house to begin with, but to go pee, right? But it's like, religion doesn't change, right?
Yeah.
All the best you can do is pick and choose what you feel like applies best to you. But then that goes back to the conversation of other people also picking and choosing and saying, what you picked and what you chose, I don't like it, so you're clearly not a Muslim.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest problem with, I guess, other people, like not religion, right? It's the concept that I believe you don't believe something I believe, so I don't like you. I hate that so much. Like it
But like,
irks
it's not
me.
just I don't like you. It's I don't like you,
And I'm gonna judge
and
you.
you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Fuck
I
you,
don't
bro.
like you right now.
Yeah.
And also eternal damnation for you after we die.
Yeah, I
right?
wish I
It's
could
like,
look them in the eye and say like, "Yo, I'll meet you there, you dickhead." Like I
Quick
wish.
anecdote. Quick
Yeah,
anecdote.
go ahead.
So I had a friend. This is not my story. This is my friend's story. Basically, I think there was like a post that she put out about like a gay guy being shamed because he's a Muslim, and people are saying he can't be a Muslim, or something like that, and like how being gay is like a Western idea,
But-
and
That is entirely false.
That's bullshit.
and she tried to explain that like it's more accepted in Western civilizations, societies, Western societies, right? And he was talking about how like it's not right, and it's better that it not be accepted, because then it just lets them do whatever they want, and
Wait,
how
what?
it's wrong and shit. Let gay people fuck and be themselves, I guess,
And that's wrong.
Oh,
and that's wrong.
Interesting.
Right, and and I think she was talking about, or maybe I took over at this point. It was like 2 weeks ago. I kind of forgot. But basically, the idea is like, why are you judging, God's creation, bro? Why don't you leave that shit for God?
Worry about your goddamn self.
Yeah, like who the fuck are you to judge God's creation? Are you better than God? How about sit the fuck down?
Are you implying God made a mistake?
Are you implying God made a mistake? Go ahead. Go ahead. No. Go up to God. Go up to make fun of this guy, bully this guy, and then when God pulls you up after you're dead, he's gonna be like, "Wait, so you were bullying this guy because of how I made him?"
He's gonna be real quick, like, we got a heretic over here.
It's in the book. And then God's gonna be like, what book? The book that fucking someone wrote 7 millennia ago that was translated over hundreds of times? That book?
Oh yeah, that's a whole other conversation, right? This book has been written a million times. Not a million.
Sure someone fucked with it. I'm sure someone fucked with it.
Like, it's like things... Bro, even right now, words do not translate properly from one language to another. Right?
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense, right?
The biggest things, isn't it, that like it's not just that the books themselves are unchanging, it's that when they get translated, they get changed.
Yeah,
right?
No matter what.
I remember, and again, I am definitely not a scholar in any right, so someone can correct me on this. But I remember reading an article that was actually explaining that. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen this before, but there are a lot of, like, let's say in American society, a lot of right-wing Christians who are like, gays shouldn't be allowed to get married, right? Because it's against the Bible. And
it was say that anywhere in the Bible, right?
Exactly. So no, here's the thing: is that the original text doesn't say anything. It doesn't list homosexuals or gays or anything about that specifically, right? Mm-hmm. But when it got translated, there were things that were added in to make it geared towards like homosexuals, right? The original text, to my understanding, if you were translated like directly, is more referring to pedophiles, right?
Yeah.
That you can't lay with another man, like it's referring to pedophiles, right? Laying with children, which I think we can all agree that's a big no-no, right? But then when being translated and having other bits of subtext and shit added into it, it became no, it's about the homosexuals because someone who was translating it had a bit more of an agenda.
I mean, like, think about, like, here's the most egregious example, or at least in historical fact in my eyes. The Anglican Church. King Henry literally said, "Hey, fuck you! I want to get my marriage annulled."
He said, "I'm the Pope," right?
He said, "Fuck you! I'm the head of state," and made his own church. wait, what? You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't matter because if you're like, by all means, being an Anglican Christian, I don't know what the word is. Right?
Is it Anglo-Saxon? Something like that? I don't know.
Anglo-Saxon.
I don't remember.
Anglo-Saxon is like the people. Oh my god, my Google is talking. I'm sorry.
I didn't hear it.
No, it's okay. But like, think about it being part of that like culture at that time. Bro, my king is now the Pope. I gotta listen to everything this motherfucker says because he said so. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Of like, you can literally just do that. Well, like, they could. You used to be able to just do that if you were powerful enough. Right? Yeah. I am the Pope. Fuck you. Right? Like, oh, it's so funny.
Okay, wait. I have a question for you guys, but before we move on, I just want to make sure we don't like. It might like shift gears a bunch, right? But before we do, like, does anyone want to share anything like about what we've said so far?
I think we've got our point.
Rafi, have you said anything? Is there anything you want to share?
I mean, so the idea of like books being changed and all that. So I think it's always like, I always hear like, oh, the Quran is great because it's never been changed and all that. And like, I really don't believe that. I'm pretty sure it's been changed somewhere along the line. It's been like, what, 1,400 years?
Wait a second. The Quran originally was written on a goddamn cave. It was changed from the first day it was made into a book.
It was written from memory because it was like, memorized by Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. And then like people transcribed what he'd said.
Right. And they were all writings on a cave, right? And then it was made into a book. So even the order,
bit,
right?
The first few bits were writings on the cave, and then like it was all just, I think Gabriel just all gave to him, and he would just like say it to people, and people would just write it down.
Yeah,
so, like,
yeah.
It was probably lost in translation at some point within these 1,400 years.
Like immediately lost.
Yeah, because he was just saying it, and people were just writing down what he was saying.
Yeah, unless everyone had a photographic memory, or not a photographic memory, but like perfect recall, then yeah, it was probably paraphrased.
Total Recall.
So a lot of religious books, like they're relevant to like the times that they were like written in. So like a lot of their text is just like not relevant for us right now.
Also, I guess to piggyback off what you're saying, like there's also a running issue of what do you call? Like I don't remember exactly what the term is. You guys might be able to help me out here. But like Islamic scholars who do interpretations and like decide new rules based off of what's said in the Quran.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What is it called? Is it hadiths?
Hadith.
Ali
Well,
or something like that.
well, hadith.
Hadith is like a
there's
saying of the prophet.
Yeah, there's no
okay,
more.
okay, never mind. Not that. Definitely not that.
Yeah. There's
right,
no
but
more
like
hadith.
the issue being like the scholars who debate this sort of stuff, who debate interpretation and how it can be applied to situations that aren't explicitly written out in the Quran, like they can all disagree. Which one you follow just sort of comes down to which one, I don't know, gets the most support from like whatever authorities are in power, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
Which
Okay.
again, when you talk about it in the context of believing in an all like a higher power, doesn't make any sense because it might not apply to you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
pretty fair.
Right.
All right, so what I want to ask you guys is that last week we talked about kids, right, and how much of a struggle it is parenting, right?
we
The
did.
biggest thing.
Oh, we did.
Well,
yeah, we did.
yeah.
Kind of. Yeah, we did. Okay. Yeah.
Kind
all
of.
right. Well, to some degree, at one point or another,
Yeah,
right? What I want to ask is basically, when it comes to trying to find that balance between culture versus religion, I feel like a lot of that comes from your parents, right? And whatever sort of biases / time they put into like telling you, oh, this is okay versus this is not okay, right? How do each of us individually, or how do you guys like make a decision about what to tell your kids is okay versus not okay, right? Because it's easy to just tell your kids like, oh yeah, just do whatever as long as it's not a problem. But like a young child doesn't exactly know what could be considered a problem, right? So then how do you go about trying to set a notion in their head of like teaching culture versus religion essentially?
For me, I at least like I've thought about it a little bit, but it's like, first of all, the fundamentals, like I do want to teach the fundamentals, right? The 5 pillars, praying, even if I don't do all of them, praying, fasting, everything, going to Hajj, right? Like the 5 pillars are literally just the fundamental basics of what it takes to be a Muslim, right? Or like explicitly a Muslim. In terms of the gray areas, I think the overarching theme that I really want to make clear to my kids is what Pratik said earlier. Hey, don't be a cunt. Like that's the overarching theme. It's like, hey, is this the right thing to do in this situation? Is it the right thing to do? Right? If it's not in your own head and you know it's not, then it is not the right thing to do. When it comes, like, if my son or my daughter is scheming someone, right? I'd be like, bro, you're being a cunt, right? Like, I guess trying to get them to critically think and understand the consequences of their actions, right? Like, if they do something just traditionally haram, like they go out and eat, is it hurting anyone? Is it hurting you? Not really, right? Like the whole
Hurting
point
God.
of hurting God. The whole point of halal haram is the whole thing is before it's animals that were seen to be clean to eat, right? The whole thing about pork and what I was taught as a kid is, oh yeah, pigs roll in mud and they're dirty. Doesn't affect their meat. It's just what you're
Right.
taught, right? It's literally just what you're taught. It doesn't make any sense. And maybe pigs back in the day were much more prone to disease. Who knows? I don't really care. Because it's not a problem anymore. Right?
I also heard the issue with pigs is like they eat anything, so like whatever you give them, they'll most likely eat it, probably. From what I've heard.
Well, yeah, maybe, right? Like, again, is it hygienically a problem nowadays? Definitely not,
Can I just bring up that there are humans that eat ass?
That is true.
Yeah,
That is true.
we're not much cleaner.
But we're not saying cannibalism is okay, but
No, that's not.
Not yet,
never
I
mind.
know. I'm kidding. But my overarching theme that I want to teach my kids is, hey, be a good person. I always tell that to my parents. It's like, no matter what I do, no matter what mistakes I make, is like, I want to be the best person I possibly can be, a good human being, right? I think that's what I want to teach.
I'm gonna add on to Tamit's question. Are you gonna encourage your kid to be religious, and follow a specific religion, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Islam. But
Well, I mean, I'd raise my kids to like, to know about it. How much they want to follow it comes down to them when they get to a certain age. Like, they will be exposed to it, hopefully by me, hopefully by my wife and my family. But when they get to, for example, like my age, it's like, I've told my parents this, it's like, you can tell me to pray all you want, but your job is done. Whether I do it or not, it's my decision, So at a certain point, it becomes just their decision.
Yeah, I agree. So like for me, like for my like I guess kids will be like I'll teach them like what I know, have to like follow me along and like do stuff that I do. Like if I pray, then like I'll have them stand by me and pray and all that. But like once they reach a certain age, I won't really force anything on them, and like it'll just be like their decision what they want to do and what they don't want to do.
Pretty fair. How about you, Pratik? I know like you're not the out of all of us, you might be the least religious. What would be your thought process going into like how to teach your kids?
okay, I think I'd like my kid. I have a feeling I'm going to end up with someone who's religious. I just feel like more people are religious now than not. And I think I would want my kid to grow up religious. Maybe not like force them into it, but if and I would obviously like not hide the fact that I'm atheist or agnostic, whatever. But I would want them to grow up with religion. Like if they went to, I don't know, if they fucking went to church or like temple or mosque or something, right? I would encourage them to go regularly, maybe like once or twice a week.
Okay. Actually, I don't know if this is a conversation you want to have, but I feel like there is a distinction between them. Would you describe yourself as atheist or agnostic then?
I would consider myself atheist, but
Okay.
I have flip-flopped.
Okay, fair. So you're saying essentially you'd like, I guess not too far from what Nikib and Rafi said of like kind of let them learn about religion, but then for you specifically it would be like also let them be aware that you're not very pious to begin with.
I mean, this is all hypothetical, right? Because I don't know if I'm actually gonna end up
again when it comes to like kids. Like every time we have this sort of conversation, we're all kind of ignoring / taking for granted that we all would have another half who would have input and have their own opinions and viewpoints and visions on how to raise them, right? But this is just sort of just since the four of us are here, like the four of our opinions.
Yeah. So if my wife ends up being religious, I would probably want her to like, raise the kid religiously, like take care of that facet, because I don't want to like fuck it up. Because I already fucked it up for myself. I fucked it up for myself, my brother, my parents are being less religious now.
I feel like that's a great justification of like, hey, I'm gonna let my wife take the lead because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah, I'll take the lead on like sports or something, or like something that I am good at, right?
Manly.
I mean, shit. If she's like an athlete too, I would have the dream. But shit. What was
I'm sorry.
Where was I?
Your point being, what you would do if she was religious.
Oh yeah, no. I would prefer the kid to be religious. And the reason I'm flip-flopping between agnostic and atheist is because I feel like I've had conversations or like whatever. I've had thoughts about like how if there is a God, I need to make sure that I do certain things right. But also if there's a God that only likes me if I pray to him, likes me over a criminal that prays to him, right? Then I kind of don't give a shit. Fuck that guy. Fuck that God. I don't want to believe in that God to begin with. See, these kinds of thoughts are the reason why like my parents are like moving away from religion. So this is why I wouldn't say anything like this. I would kind of let my wife take the lead here.
That just reminded me, like the last bit of what you're saying just reminded me of the I don't remember what video this is, but it was like a skit of Hitler like in the last few seconds before he kills himself, of just being like, Jesus Christ is my savior, I've just been saved, I'm not going to hell, woo, and then kills himself, right? Just like, hey, this is okay, right? That's how that works.
This reminds me of like, there's this thing is like when you die, you say a dua that makes you go to heaven, and I was like, oh,
To
so
like
there's a
absolve your
loophole.
sins.
Here's the loophole, boys. We out.
Yeah, like, yo, asking for forgiveness is such a cheap shot. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta live here being like all nice and shit just because I don't want to be a cunt. And what religious people have an out? I'm trying to be religious then, but yeah. I mean,
Well,
No,
joking,
I get that.
joking.
I guess that is a whole different conversation. But just before we jump into that,
What about
I'd
you,
say
Yatsumi?
like for me, yeah. So for me, it would basically be I guess not too different from you guys. Like I think I definitely want to like for me personally, I don't think I'm the most religious Muslim in the world. I'm definitely far from that, right? Honestly, I feel like I'm closer to agnostic in the sense that like I feel like there could be a god, right? There also could not be. That's fine if there isn't. It's fine if there is. But I definitely don't think he cares what I do on a day-to-day basis, right? And I know that's something that a lot of people like disagree with, right? I don't think an all-knowing, all-seeing, all-omniscient being definitely gives a shit whether or not like I'm following a specific set of rules, right? That being said, when I was little, like when I was really young, or between like I don't know 6 to 7, I was a very good Muslim boy. Like I went to Arabic
Yeah.
school every weekend with my sister. They had like levels and shit, like beginner, intermediate, whatever it is. I remember like my teachers were like surprised I was rising up in the ranks, right?
Yes,
Really
boy.
quickly or some shit. I looking back on it, like it was hilarious, right?
Yeah.
And then they'd have these like once a year they'd have like these competitions to recite, and I won it once. I got first place
My
one time,
guy.
right? The thing is, that was me at 7, right? Like 7 or 8, whatever it is. As I got older, like if you ask me to recite right now, like I'm just gonna sit there and be like, I will do it in my head. Like I'm not reading that shit out loud. Don't, dear God, don't make me do that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just such a disparity between how I am now in terms of religion versus
Yeah.
how I used to be. Um, and of course, there are plenty of personal reasons for that, for which we're not here forever. But I think I definitely would like to give my kids the opportunity to learn about religion, right? Learn about Islam. And then from there, let them make up their own decisions as to if they want to be religious, how religious, if they don't want to be religious, if they want to just say screw it all, that's fine, right? If they want to say I follow part of it, that's also fine, right? I personally, if someone asks me, I still identify as Muslim, right? I still do a lot of the important stuff. I don't pray as much as I should be, but that's a separate conversation. But at the same time, like I really do think it just comes down to at the end of the day, and we've said this many times before, so this might as well be the slogan for today's episode.
God's
don't
plan.
be a cunt, right?
Don't be a cunt.
Just don't be
That's my
cunty.
life motto. That's my life motto.
Yeah, it's a
I
good
think
life
it's a
motto.
solid life motto, right? And I
Yeah.
think
Good
it's
one.
easy to teach a kid, don't be a cunt, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is like that's unfortunately we also and then like I can only speak to my own personal experience. We also live in a society where sometimes just not being a cunt isn't good enough for
is
certain
not good
people.
enough. No.
But in my opinion, they're just gonna have to deal with
I mean,
that.
yeah, then
right?
that seems like a you problem. You know what I'm saying? Like that seems like another
Exactly.
person. Like if someone comes up to me, is like, "Yo, bro, you don't pray. Like you go out in shorts." I'm like, "So, what happened, bro? You tight or what?" Like I don't know.
That's my dick.
Why
Yeah.
you looking at my legs? Eyes up here, sir.
yeah, right. Like I'm like, bro.
I said it to one of my aunts, and that shit was hilarious.
Wait, what?
Wait, did she tell you why do you have like shorts on?
Yeah, no. It was I wore shorts that like go just above my knee, right? I'm
You
also 6
are.
feet tall, so like it's
Quite difficult.
legs for days, I guess, right? And one of my aunts tells my mom, "Hey, your son's shorts are too short." My mom's had this conversation with me before, and I've told her it's fine, right? I told her it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And then me being fucking this aunt is also kind of young. Me being like quippy and shit was like eyes up here, and she just looks at me like that's not funny. And I'm sitting there fucking dying, right? Like two
Exactly.
completely different pages right
This
there.
is exactly what I expect Tumit's conversations to go like with his family.
It's great. It's great. It's a great time. It's
Yeah.
a great time for the people who don't have a stick up their ass. I do
Yeah.
have a few family members who have the biggest stick up their ass, and like during weddings they want to do religious talks, and I'm just like, please go away, please go away. During my, I'm gonna go on the record right now, right, for the 3 of you guys as witnesses, and for anyone listening, there will be no religious talks from no religious members of my family at my wedding. Going on
Okay.
the record.
All
That shit
right.
is such a downer. Like the last thing anyone needs to hear is follow this shit or you're going to hell.
And then you
right?
guys get
Like-
on the dance floor and party like an animals. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like-
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
to me, it's gonna twerk.
Yeah. To me,
Yo,
it's
I saw a
dancing's fun.
video on Reddit on how to twerk. It's all in the ankles. That's a separate conversation. We'll
Okay,
talk
what
about
the
that
fuck?
later.
Okay,
Anyways,
yeah, the weird parts of YouTube, right?
Anyways, point being, one thing I do want to share on like an actual more serious basis is I want my kids to, learn about Islam and stuff like that. I personally don't want to send them to Arabic school. I don't want to send them to like a big class thing. If I could pick, right, and this is of course given a bunch of things like got the money for it and whatnot. But I would prefer to have like a private tutor type of thing to teach them, only because like I went to Arabic school and like it's like rolling the dice in terms of if you get a teacher who's nice or if you get a teacher who's an asshole. And unfortunately, because it's Arabic school, like some of the teachers
No one
can
cares.
be really old fashioned.
Yeah, no one
They'll
cares.
beat your ass or
No, I got my
like,
ass. Everyone got their ass beat at Arabic school,
exactly.
right?
Like thankfully, I never did. I'll be honest, I never did, and
Yeah.
I had mostly nice teachers except for one who was kind of mean,
Mhm.
but like he liked me because I was his like little prodigy boy.
Yeah.
And again, this was me as a young kid, right? But like I
flex,
watched
big
kids
flex.
get their asses beat, right? And granted, some of them deserved it, but that's not for me to decide, right? But point being, I would like someone who's a bit more, not prehistoric in their viewpoints to
I
teach
think-
my kids.
Yeah, go ahead, finish.
No,
Oh, just teach
it
your
was
kids?
exactly that, right? Just
Oh, okay.
like I don't want like someone with prehistoric viewpoints teaching. Like if I have my son, like I would want both of my kids to be taught together. And let's say hypothetically I have a son and a daughter, right?
Yep.
I don't want someone telling
Your son something.
I don't want
your
someone
daughter
telling my
something else.
kids that like I don't want someone telling my son you get to be the man in the house, and someone telling my daughter you should drop out of school and have no life aspirations because you might as well just be a housewife in the future, right? Like that shit doesn't fly in my household.
I agree with you. So again, a lot of the things my parents like put me in, I was like tight when they put me in them, like Bangla school and like Arabic school. But I'm grateful for doing those things now. But I was learning quote unquote or like practicing Arabic well into my like mid-teens. For the beginning of my life, it was all in schools, right? It was always like Saturday, right? Saturday, Sunday, right? It was a pain in the ass because you wake up early as a kid and you're just like, man, I don't get a day off. Well, whatever. I'm just venting. And I agree. I 100% would not do like evening school, Saturday or Sunday school at a mosque, because same thing is I don't know what they will be telling my son or my daughter, and like our parents would be like, whatever they say, it makes sense, believe them. But again, perspectives change religion, and I feel like that's something our parents might not really think about. Is like they may say something that doesn't make sense in our eyes, but because they're raised in Bangladesh, they're taught like essentially the same things. But
real quick note about religious schools.
Mhm.
I feel like they have a really high rate of like teachers getting frisky with kids.
Yeah, because parents allow their kids to get beat by like
no.
No, I think he's talking about pedophilia.
Oh,
yeah,
I don't.
For that, I can only go off of anecdotal experience, and
Yeah.
thankfully, I don't think that was a problem at the Arabic school I went to. Right, I do know what you're talking about, and I guess that's also a concern, but that's not one that came to my mind.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't. I just
heard
wouldn't
way
go
too many
around
stories like this.
Really?
I've heard a lot. Like at first,
in
I heard
temples?
one friend talk about it. No. There's like one next to my school, next
Arabic
to where
school?
I live.
Arabic
yeah,
school? Oh,
yeah, an
really?
Arabic school around where I live. I don't want to like say it out loud.
No,
on
don't.
the
Don't.
podcast.
No, don't.
I'll probably say it on Discord.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. But
Basically, one friend talked about like his or her experiences there and what happened, right? And I brought it up because I was fucking flabbergasted. I was enraged and everything. And then I talked about it with some of my childhood friends who went there, and they were like, "Yeah, this shit happened all the time, like with multiple students."
I don't have any experience with like my local mosque or anything like that.
I think it would kind of like turn me off to religious schools in general. But anyway,
even from my experience, when I was doing it for a very long time, I was consistently going / inconsistently going for pretty much every year up until I was 16.
Mhm.
After
That's late.
That's the schools. After like 12, I was taught at home, and there's a reason for that. But when I was young, it was literally me and my brother every single weekend, on and off for up until we were like 11, 12. And I never learned nearly as much as my parents thought I did. Bro, they barely taught me how to pray, right? Like, there was nothing like that. All I would do is constantly read the Quran over and over again, and if I wasn't completely perfect, restart. Like it was always this like cyclical, this was just cycle of me getting to a certain point, stopping for a while, not having the practice, going back, and they're saying you got to start over. So at a certain point, my parents were like, "You're not doing anything, and we're just wasting our money." I was like, "Okay, I agree," because I don't learn anything here, because nothing really gets done. Because you're just with a bunch of kids. You're there for 2 hours. These Wazoos are getting paid, however much an hour, and then they go home. Right? It's nothing. So after that, my parents decided to get me home tutors, and then they decided to get me a tutor or a teacher that would teach me like the correct pronunciation and the right way to like really recite. And I'm glad that I did that, because I still can do it to this day if I just get like an hour's worth of practice or 2 hours. And that's the thing, is I will pronounce things in the very correct way to do it, and my parents will say you're doing it wrong, and I'm like, no, this is what I was taught. This is literally what the Arabs do it. Like, this is literally what the Arabs do. But I'm glad. I feel like I could very minimally teach to read. I just don't remember like all the small stuff. But teachings, I wouldn't want that from like a mosque.
A lot of that, like, I super feel you on it. I think, okay, this is a very specific question to keep. But when you went to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said they would have you read over the Quran multiple times and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Did they ever teach you like to understand it / like what it meant?
No, they don't. They don't do that at all.
You were always just reciting like surahs. You were always reciting in Arabic without ever knowing what it meant.
No, exactly.
Okay, I had the exact same experience, and I hated that.
Yeah.
Right? That like you could be, there would be people who dedicated their entire childhood to memorizing the Quran, right? And they'd be called hafizes for people who don't know, right? And a lot of these kids, sure, they spent a ton of time, hours on end, memorizing this whole book and everything it says, but they don't know what any of it means, right? Because, like we said before, like a point of pride for a lot of Muslims is that the Quran's never been, rewritten or translated, which is great and all if you can understand Arabic. But for a lot of us who don't natively speak Arabic, we're just memorizing like arbitrary Arabic sentences and like text, essentially, right? And that's one thing I've always like despised.
Right. If there's a school or something like that actually teaches your like children of what like the Quran's actually saying, I feel like that's okay. But I feel like there's a reason why they don't do that, because a lot of the things that's said in the Quran would be argued by children, if that makes sense. Like so many things.
I think that's a good thing.
Yes, I think that. But think about it.
Yeah.
Is it really a good thing in their eyes?
No.
They're just gonna go home and tell their parents like, "Yo, what the fuck are they teaching me?" Like this doesn't
be an obedient little child, right?
Yeah, it's
like,
not.
The minute a kid hears, "Oh, music is the sign of doom of Armageddon coming," and it's like, is that how that works? Right? The minute kids start questioning it, that becomes problematic, isn't it?
I mean, like if I take like a little bit of historical context, as soon as the Latin Bible started becoming translated is when it correlates to when the various different sects of Christianity started to arise. Because before the translation, it was people were not did not understand Latin like in those times before like Lutheranism like was the first like division, right?
Right.
Priests would speak the Bible in Latin. Right, and no one would understand. They just go to church because that was what people would do. As soon as it became translated and it was a household items is when the questionings began. Historical context, like that's what happened, right? Martin Luther read the Bible and said, "Hey, these things don't make sense," and split off, right? So, but think about it: which Muslim household have you been in that has a translated Quran or Arabic? Right, it doesn't.
I will say, and this is completely anecdotal. My mother actually has one.
Well, that's nice. I wish.
But like
I
I know that's the exception, right? So like, I just want to toss that in there. Like my mother, like there are people who do translate the Quran, and I'm sure if you do care enough, there are resources that have translated.
No, you can do
Quran.
it. No, you can do it online. Yeah.
But I think the main issue for anyone listening who maybe like has an issue with what we're saying right now, I think the main issue is that it's usually, at least on a larger scale, just taught in Arabic, right?
Mhm.
Just memorize these surahs, memorize these sayings in text. Don't worry about what it means necessarily.
Right. Maybe the very minimal things that you will like learn, they'll have translations, right? That's all it really is. Everything outside of that, like the whole Quran itself, you generally don't know what the fuck you're reading.
And it's a pity because when you actually read it, I think another really interesting point is sometimes when you read it, like your own interpretation of the text could be different from the people around you,
Yeah.
right? But instead of sort of encouraging that dialogue, a lot of it just kind of gets hampered down with just no. Here's what it says.
This is what it
Here's
means.
what we think it means, or here's what it's accepted to mean. Just grit your teeth and keep going.
Yeah. Like and that's. And yeah, it's an older mindset. It's like even our parents definitely did not grow up understanding what it really means. They're just taught what their village teachers taught them. That's what it is, So I can never knock my parents for doing what they did because that's what they did. Like that's how they learned. That's fine.
I guess that's why the fun part is that's what our parents did, and this is how we turned out. The fun part is going to be figuring out what do we do and how do our kids turn out.
Screw up my kids in
response.
whole new ways. Whole new ways, boys. All right, guys. We're getting close to an hour and a half. Is there anyone else want to toss in anything before I wrap up the episode?
I just want to ask a quick question, and this is specifically for Pratik, right?
Yo.
Have you, when you were little, right? I remember you saying you were a bit more religious up until like 7. Did you have any formal like religious education?
I had to do everything that like my mother did, and she was pretty religious. Like we would pray, I think, every day. I would occasionally clean like the statues before prayer, wash my hands, and all that shit. So kind of, I guess. I think I would have to read some things. I would have to like my mom would pray, and I would have to repeat what she's saying. Things like that. It wasn't too formal or formal at all. But it just made no sense to me.
So you didn't have like any sort of like Sunday school type thing then?
No, I don't think so. Sundays we would go to temple, and I would have to like recite prayers along with the rest of the people there.
Okay, that's pretty like standard, I would say.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, our minimal exposure to Hinduism, right? Kind of just goes from our friends' perspectives.
It does, right?
And
I was just curious about like Pratik's perspective. Just given like you already said from a young age you were not very religious. I just was wondering like to what extent was like Hinduism sort of like taught to you, or or how was it taught to you?
Yeah, it was basically through my parents. I would go to like Durga Pujas, and then it wasn't really taught to me. I would just kind of go, show up, repeat what they would tell me to repeat, and then I'd go home. And even at home, like with the prayers at home, I would do the same thing.
Right. And like my experience, or like my exposure to Hinduism comes from like, again, all my friends. A few of them are Bengali, a few of them are not. And Hinduism is always like every culture has its own, again, perspective, right? Everything, like there's Hindus who are vegetarian, there are Hindus who are not vegetarian. There's so many different. I don't know how to phrase it.
Traditions.
Sex.
It's not sex. Sex is the. I feel like I say like, I don't know. Sex feels like I'm referring to the caste system, but
it is the caste system, though.
Yeah, but like there's various different interpretations and followings, at least from my perspective of Hinduism. That everyone. I like for me, my perspective is, bro, this is how you follow your religion. Like that's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a question for you guys. Like, do you think you're ever gonna be like, I don't know, really religious like your parents one day?
It's funny you mentioned that. Like. So the reason I jumped straight into this is because when I last had a conversation with my mother about religion, she had explicitly said, "Oh, I'm not gonna bug you to pray anymore because I don't have to worry about it," right? And up until that, like she had been telling me, I want you to pray a bit more and whatnot, and every now and then she does. But I was interested about why she said that, and keep in mind that in my family, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. My sister and I are the youngest of our cousins, right? On my mom's side, at least, right? So all of our cousins are older than us. There's at least like 7 other families in front of us who are all older. And my mom kind of just looked at me and she was like, because you'll probably turn out like your cousins. You'll have your phase where you don't act piously at all, right? You don't pray much, you don't do anything. And then when you're older, you'll just become super religious and it's fine, right? And thing is, I know which cousin she's referring to, right? Like maybe out of like 5 or 6 of them who have gotten older and have kids now, maybe 3 have become really religious, and now those 3, like 2 of them are like flight risk religious, right? To kind of toss that in there for a margin of measurement, right?
Oh no.
But like I just looked at my mom and I was like, okay, I appreciate you giving me that sort of freedom to be like, all right, I'll just, go about my own thing, and then eventually if I become religious, I become religious. But it was just interesting that my mom's perspective was, oh no, you will end up like your cousins, and as you get older, you will just become religious, right? And to that, I don't think I'm going to stand here and say, oh, that definitely will or won't happen. If it does, it does. But as of right now, I don't think I'm on that path. But I also like, if I become religious for whatever, series of events, I don't think that'll be a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like me letting life continue going by. And if I do happen to see the light and suddenly start praying 5 times a day, cool. But if I don't, I think the end message of "don't be a cunt" will still resonate devoutly within my soul.
For me, is like the reason I feel like people, as they get older, they get religious, is the fear of death becomes much more scary as you get older. You
the
know,
midlife crisis.
the midlife
Impending
crisis.
mortality.
Impending mortality. We're in our 20s. We feel invincible, bro. Like, yeah, you could say like your back hurts when you wake up and your knees fucking crack when you get up. Like that's bullshit, right? We all know that. We just exaggerated. We just dramatic. You know what I'm saying? Unless you get some problems, well then it's up to you. But for me at least,
I'm 26.
Okay, you died.
That jump from like 22 to 26, it hits.
Yeah, I'm 22, so I still think that I'm immortal. So
fucking child ass bitch.
I have time too. If it's okay.
Yeah. Rafi's 23. Timid's old.
I'm 20. What? Hey. Okay. Wait. I'm younger than Pratik. Can we not just say to me's old? You motherfucker. I swear to. I can't. Anyways, you were saying.
Yeah. We're both pretty old.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting to like if adulting age is considered like 29, 30, right? We're getting closer. I'm not gonna lie. We're getting closer to being like actual proper. You know what I mean? Like we're not teenage. None of us are teenagers.
No.
This is like also, marriage age. Start of marriage age. I don't think
we're like yeah. We're getting there, right?
Yeah.
We're like peak. We're like peak right for marriage type of thing, right? I'm sure there's a bunch of people our age who are like 25 and they're like, time to get married right now, right? And it's like. That's a separate conversation.
Apparently, a family friend found a doctor for me, so I was like, you know what? Okay.
Anyway,
okay.
But no. Like I know we're getting close to actual adulting age.
Yeah, but I'm saying like I've always wanted to be a good Muslim. Like, not like maybe pray as much as I can, and obviously still hold the same perspective as I do right now. Or maybe they'll just be a little heightened. I want to one day do Hajj. I want to fast all 30 days. I want to pray as much as I can. I know I'm not going to be able to pray 5 times a day. Ever. Maybe when I get like retirement, like old. My goal is always to be a decent Muslim. For whatever reason, that's just a goal of mine. So I don't think I'll be like, hello, like hey, the flight risk, as Timid would put it.
Oh God!
That's
Quietly.
a problem.
I would say quietly be a good Muslim. No one will ever know. Not many people will really know. But quietly in my own eyes, be a good Muslim. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Fair. Can I give a quick story about the flight risk? Because he's really funny.
I think you should also explain it just for,
Oh, yeah. This guy isn't like an actual flight risk. It's just when he was younger, like let's say our age right now, he was a very loose, happy-go-lucky, like free guy. I don't know I genuinely don't know what happened. I didn't see him for a couple years. And then he comes, like when he was younger, he looked like Batista, right? Like his face actually looked like Batista. And then when he got older, he just grew a fat fucking beard and suddenly like was the most religious man I'd known. And just for reference, like I'm not gonna give anything too specific, but my house is right across the street from a mandir, right? Now, my family is all Muslim. Mandir is for Hindus, right? We live in New York, and that's not an issue. That's never been an issue. I've never seen that as an issue, right? So across the street is a mandir, and on the same street, right, just at the other end of the block, is another mandir, right? Cool. Two houses of worship for Hindu people, right? Again, I've never had an issue with that. No one in my family has had an issue with that. We own the house we live in, so my family was definitely aware that these mandirs existed, right? My only issue with it is when the one across the street has a wedding and they start busting out the drums and I can't hear anything because the drums are so goddamn loud, right? But that is the extent of my issue with them. My cousin comes over to our house. Granted, I say he's my cousin. He's old. He's like maybe in his 40s or something now. He's got kids. He used to be fun when he was younger, but he's not anymore. And he straight up like starts talking to me about me trying to convince my parents into moving, right? And at first I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe if the finances work out in that way, like I'm sure we could rent the top floor and we can make more off the rent than for the mortgage, and we can profit off of that.
You're thinking
And that's what I thought. That's why I thought he was going with that as like a financial move, right? And he was like, "Oh, that's cool and all, but like, just to get away from the Hindus." And I'm like, "What?
Oh my
What?
god.
And he's like, "Yeah, you guys live on a house with two mandirs. Like, that's such a problem." And I just looked at him like, "That's a problem? But like, why though, right?" And he's like, "Because you should go instead. You should go move to a neighborhood that's on the same block as a mosque, right? Like that would be much better." I'm like, "It's the same thing. Like there's a mosque like what, less than half a mile away from my house, right? Like, again, like that's not how this society works. That's not like there is no issue with simply living on the same block as another religious like house of worship, right?" And it was just like, it was just like a moment of realization of, oh, you're just that far gone that for some reason just living on the same block as a mandir is a problem, right? And it's like, what's good with you? This guy also lived the majority of his life in New York, right? And it's like, how did you live and grow up here and still turn out like this? Like, there's no reason for this. But yeah, that's the flight risk in our family.
Oh.
We all just joke about that because he's too damn religious for his own good. Like, another quick anecdote: during the nikah, he was debating with the imam. Right?
About what?
What?
About what he was saying for the ceremony, right? About what prayers he was using.
What?
And like you don't even have to be Muslim to just know that if you have a family member who's debating with the religious expert that was brought in to lead the ceremony, you might want to sit down, right? You might want to tell that person, stay in your lane.
But,
This
like,
is not for you to speak.
Why
is
make
he the
a
guy
scene?
who? Sorry, go ahead.
No. Why make a scene at a nikah, man?
No,
Like,
thankfully he
it's
didn't
not
make a
necessary.
scene. But like the funniest thing was like as like my cousin was getting married, right? As my cousin and her groom was being brought in, right? And the dads were all kind of just like talking and getting everything sorted out. We just my young like one of the younger cousins and I were just standing in the corner. We just look over and the guy is like debating with the hujur or with the imam. I don't remember exactly what it was. In terms
he
of
doing
like
it in
what should
private?
be said. What's up?
Was he doing it in private?
Kind of, but not really, right?
Okay, I have a theory about what this was.
Just a straight up conversation,
Yeah.
and we were just looking at like, well, like bro, stop, please. Like, it's so unneeded. Like, if you really care this much, you become an imam, you go lead a mosque, you go you go do someone's nikah. But like, we're already here. Don't be dumb, right? There's no reason for this. Stay in your lane, straight up. Just stay in your lane. But yeah, that dude, wild.
Crazy. That's insane. Pratik, what were you saying?
I was gonna say something else, but as like another story that I have, like in my family in India, they're kind of, well, the older people in my family are kind of similarly racist. Like they live in a city that's 50% Muslim, 50% Hindu, right?
Uh-huh.
But I think I told this story before.
Your
But
grandmother?
when my grandma saw me,
Oh,
she
yeah,
saw
yeah,
me
yeah.
with a beard. She was like, "Yo, you look like a terrorist. What are you doing? Shave it off." Right? Which is weird because there are other people in the family who have full-on beards as well.
Well, you did mention this in an earlier podcast. I remember.
You did
Yeah,
mention your
like-
grandmother's a wonderfully tolerant person.
She's also like 90, more than 90 at this point. So I don't blame her. She's a product of a different religion. I'm sorry, of a different time period. I feel like there are hateful people on all sides.
Of course,
It's
always,
just how it is.
always.
Except atheists, we are perfect.
Speaking of
Just kidding,
beard,
just kidding.
I like recently I shaved my beard like really short, like trimmed it really short because it was getting really scruffy, and I wanted to like get like a soft reset of it, right?
Yeah.
And my mom was like, "Oh, Satan was whispering in your ear when you did that because she didn't like how short it was."
Wait, what?
She was like,
Because-
"Oh, Shaitan was whispering in your ear when you did that."
Because he didn't like how because he likes how short it is.
The devil
She
was
didn't like how
baiting
short
you
my beard
into
was.
shortening your beard, is what she's trying to get at.
Yeah.
I love that parents still use that that excuse. I really trimmed my beard in the middle of quarantine. My dad was like shocked. He was like, "You shouldn't be doing that. If you're gonna grow one out, you have to keep it." I was like, "Bro, shut up."
No, I super agree with you because like I've been told like, oh, now that you've grown a beard, you can't get rid of it, and I'm just like, are you telling me if I just want to shave it all off, I can? Because I
Like,
will do that just to prove a point. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, is it like the bristles just not gonna work, or is like my hair just now impenetrable? Like, what's going on?
Right? Like you're thinking there's a logical reason for
Yeah.
it, right? You're trying to think like this person isn't going down the cuckoo, like religion is the one and only thing running this,
Yeah.
but it's like, no, nah, you gave him the benefit of the doubt for no good reason.
Yeah.
It's being wasted.
What can you do?
I feel like this might be, unless there's anything else that needs to be said, like this is probably just a good way to segue into today's moral of don't be a cunt. Like
Don't
that's
be a
really
cunt.
it, right?
Don't be a
It's
cunt.
a very low bar.
I wish I could make that the title of the episode, but I don't think that's going to work. Unfortunately,
You could pronounce it differently.
don't be a. I
A
can't.
cunt?
No. That sounds
Oh.
like a racial slur.
Oh.
No,
Okay,
no,
all right, never mind.
That sounds-
Like
We'll back that one
explicitly
up real
say
bad.
what I meant. I literally just meant like you know the last name Khan. Just add
Yeah.
a T at the end.
no,
Big
no. We're not doing that.
We'll
I'm not
play
making it-
around with that after
Yeah,
we're done with the
yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
In
I'm
my
not-
defense, I was thinking about how like Irish people or like the
No,
British
no.
say
just
it.
Stop
No,
justifying
I
it.
won't. We won't. I'm just saying. Okay,
I
I
know,
feel
I
like I
know.
just anyway. Anyway,
Well,
you're right, Pratik. It is a low bar. Unfortunately, it's a little too high for some people.
Yeah.
But
A
we
lot
can
of
all at
people.
least teach our kids. Don't be a cunt.
All right.
Oh no. What I meant was like that's the lowest bar for us and people we know, right?
Yeah.
I think the important thing is to know like what a cunt is and make that meaning known to people who maybe do cuntish things that are in your friend group. Call them out on it. That's it.
That's
That's the ending message, I guess.
Yeah. Don't be a cunt. Make sure other people know what it is. Might not always be the easiest thing to do in the world. Well, guys, I think we've had a very productive episode. I don't think we've said anything too controversial in terms of.
Hope not. I'm
Western
sure someone's angry.
Yeah, if someone's angry, hey, talk to me. Let's work it out, man. Let's see how much we can debate. I want to have some fun.
Hey guys,
Uh,
if my opinion is wrong, then that's fine for you.
Yeah,
It's okay.
yeah. Ding dong. Our opinions are wrong. Whatever, bro.
I think that it should be the title of the
Ding dong.
podcast.
Ding dong. Your opinion is wrong. I'm kind of
Ding-dong,
vibing with.
our opinions are wrong.
Our opinions are wrong. I'm vibing
Yeah.
with it.
Right? It's not
I'm kind
bad.
of vibing with it. All right. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the 7th episode of the It Be Like That podcast. We are still having a great time doing this, and we hope to catch you guys next week for episode 8. Thank you very much, and deuces.